Hello everyone, welcome back to Witchinary. If you have yet to subscribe to this channel, then please do so because we're getting crafty, and today I wanted to bring to you the November 2018 Simon Says stamp kit called Thanks and Leaves. This kit brings some Simon Says stamp bronze sequins, a Tim Holtz butterfly adornments, 1 orange peel envelope, 2 Simon Says stamp 4-bar envelopes, 2 white tags, the Snarky small stickers from Tim Holtz, the Thanks and Leaves stamp set, as well as some ivory green leaf orange peel Simon Says stamp cardstock and 1 sheet of Nina Desert Storm cardstock. So now that we're done going through all of that, let's get started. To start off, I want to cut all of my card panels, so I'm going to go ahead, or my card bases, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold these in half and then fold these off camera, or cut these off camera. After I'm done doing this, I'm going to go ahead and stamp down all of my leaves, and for this I kind of wanted to do a different sort of color palette that we're not kind of used to seeing incorporated in fall. So for that, I'm going to use the colors of the Distress inks in Wilted Violet, Dusty Concord, Brush Corduroy, and Ripe Persimmon. And then from Hero Arts, I'm going to use the Feather ink cube that we got like in February, as well as some Distress Oxide fossilized amber ink. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp all of these and fussy cut them off camera. I also really wanted to do some foiling for this kit. I know that this isn't something that we are kind of used to seeing a lot. It used to be a huge thing like a couple months ago, but then we kind of like just moved on into alcohol inks. But I really wanted to give a shine to my cards that I didn't have, and I also kind of want to give them a little bit of a rustic glam sort of look. So I really wanted to do this. So I pulled out my Simon Says stamp ink pad, and then I'm just going to go ahead with some Paper Source black embossing powder, and I'm just going to emboss these images. The reason why I'm choosing to do this instead of like the original Deco foil technique is because I'm just more used to it, and I know that this embossing powder is going to melt again when it goes through my Scotch Laminator, so I know it's going to peel that Deco foil right off. The colors of Deco foil that I'm using are Princess Gold and Purple. To my defense, I honestly thought that the Deco foil that I had bought was gold, and then I completely did not check exactly what I buy. So yeah, once I'm done just putting all of the images that I want to put into my laminator are done, I'm gonna just peel them off. As you can see, not all of my images are perfect, and that's just because I didn't emboss them the right way, or I just didn't lay them out the right way. But once I'm done actually laminating and foiling all of the images I want to use, I'm just going to go ahead and fussy cut all of them. So now that all of my images are foiled and stamped, I just want to give you a quick look of how pretty these images look. They're just so shiny and perfect, and I'm just ready to, you know, get started on my cards. For my first card, I wanted to go very simple. I just took a piece of scrap cardstock and I ripped the corners just to give this nice torn rustic look, and I'm gonna take my card base, which is just some Nina Desert Storm cardstock, and I'm just ripping apart. I know that there's a die for this, but I don't have it, and honestly, why buy it when I can just rip up paper and get the exact same effect? So yeah, I'm going to, you know, just keep messing with it. And I have to give a disclaimer, as I was doing these cards, I kind of kept getting ideas after I was done with other cards, so I do revisit them later, and often the picture that you're going to see at the end is not the end result of how I left it when I was crafting, so you'll see what I mean. After I was done cutting my little panel, I'm just going to take a sentiment and I'm going to emboss that with some Simon Says stamp embossing powder, and I'm going to pull out my Ranger Princess Gold embossing powder. Again, to my defense, I literally thought that I had the exact same gold shade and everything, and I didn't, so we're just gonna go with it and not really think too much about it. So after I was done embossing it, I kind of wanted to do a lot of like layering, a lot of flourishes on my cards. I was watching Coco at the time of making these cards because it was pretty much October for a very long time, and I really love that film. And I was very inspired by the title sequence of the movie with the way that the title Coco was laid out, so I kind of used that as my inspiration for these cards. Then I just wanted to make sure that the colors all match nicely so I can get that little rustic glam sort of look. And once I was done kind of playing around with all of my images, it was time to, you know, actually tape all of these down. So yeah, I did play around with some dimension and I played around with adhesive. So for some of these, I'm going to use my Tombow glue adhesive, and for others, I'm just going to use some foam squares, and others, I'm just going to use my tape runner. Once I was done with that little flourish at the corner, I adhere this pretty awesome leaf, and off camera, I do adhere some of the actual sequins. But once I was done with that, I wrapped up this card. For my next card, I really wanted to put some foiling on the actual panel itself so it could match any of the sentiments that I might do. So I took a piece of double-sided tape and I just go ahead and peel this off. I'm going to take some of that rose gold Deco foil and I'm just going to lay it on top so I can, you know, just get the shine, and I'm just going to press down really, really hard so I, you know, make sure I don't get any corners that were kind of like lopsided. I'm also going to take some Paper Source chocolate paper. This paper, I've mentioned it before, is no longer sold, but any piece of chocolate or brown cardstock would do. I go ahead and I heat emboss the sentiment and I raise up my panel on a piece of orange peel cardstock. And again, I'm going to play around with just layering those beautiful little elements. At first, I thought I wanted to do something at the bottom, but then I kind of changed my mind and I wanted to have a little bit more of a clean Thanksgiving sort of look with a lot more shine. So I decided to kind of make a top wreath at the top, and I just, you know, play around with dimension as well. I take down some elements, I raise up others like I'd been doing. For this particular card, I do go ahead and I tape everything down and raise it, yeah. But then I go back and I wasn't happy with the final card that or the final little leaf that I played at the top or put at the top. So I do change it off camera, and I do want to let you guys know about that. Anyway, once I was done layering all of those things, I go ahead and I take those bronze sequins from Simon Says Stamp and I adhere them down using my Hero Arts clear lacquer pen, and that wrapped up this card. For my next card, I really wasn't sure if I wanted to do something onto the card base, but I had already kind of had this ModaScrap wood grain paper in my stash back from like May when we were introduced to ModaScrap through a Simon Says Stamp kit. So I took one of the wood grain papers and I tried to stay away from using a bunch of this paper on my cards just because I wasn't sure how everyone would like it, and I knew that not everyone had wood grain paper, and I kind of wanted to stick to some of the things in this kit, so this is the only card that I use this wood grain for. But once I adhere it down, I start playing around with the same dimension, but around this time I also start realizing that I had already adhered this paper down to my card base. So if I go ahead and put a sentiment on this and then heat emboss it, it's gonna warp. And it's gonna warp really, really, really bad. So I wasn't really happy with that fact, and that's exactly what ended up happening. So I did have to go ahead and cut this card in half just so I can adhere it to another the green panel, and I wasn't really thrilled with that, but you know what, sacrifices had to be made. However, that said, this is the final version of my flourish at the top, so that's really good. And guys, I'm so sad about this. For the most part, all of my actual sentiments are going to be heat embossed with some Ranger Princess Gold embossing powder, and here, as you can see, I didn't think that that was a really smart choice because you can't really see it against that background, but I decided to go ahead and add a pen drop shadow towards the back and then cut this off and put it on a piece of green cardstock, as well as add a Snarky sentiment towards the bottom, and I really like this card. For my next card, I wanted to play around with those beautiful butterfly sequins. Anytime I think of butterflies, I always think about them flying away. So to start off, I'm just kind of gonna map out what I want to do with this. But because I was already adding so much dimension with those butterflies, and I wanted to adhere everything down to the card base itself, I decided to just go ahead and stamp everything down the way that it should be, so that way the butterflies are the only actual dimension this card kit, or that this card is actually going to give you. So here I go. I'm going to stamp all these things down in the colors of the leaves that I have already designed for this. I also want to take some of the smaller leaves that come in this stamp set, and I'm going to go and stamp them down directly. I'm going to take some Nuvo drops in the color Ebony, and I'm just going to add a few quick drops just to give more of that sort of look like my butterflies are flying away. And I do like the way that this looks. Somehow there's just something about the black that kind of ties these colors together in a really autumn sort of way. I'm also going to take the Sentiment Send Hugs, and I'm just going to stamp it down a few times with my Distress inks in various colors, just because I kind of needed a sentiment on here and I didn't want to add more bulk than the 3 butterflies that are on here. And yes guys, I am hoarding the rest of the actual butterflies because I'm a hoarder and I love these. So yeah, this finished off this card. For my next card, I took out another piece of that brown chocolate paper source paper, and I wanted to kind of have another card with one of these stickers. I think these stickers are great, but they're very, very hard to coordinate with the actual stamp set, unless you want to actually be snarky and be like, but it's okay because you're mine. So yeah, I decided to do it for one of these actual cards, and I like the way that this reads. Although I can't really read it right now because the card is away from me. But anyway, it's okay. Once I was done with that, I wanted to create at least 2 kind of flourishy wreath things at the top and at the bottom of this card. So I go ahead and I try to mirror both of these very much. So that way, if there's a green leaf like here, there will be like a yellow or an orange leaf at on the other end. And that seemed to work out very, very well. I love the colors of this card, and I love how they're really, 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 really snarky. So once I was done doing all of this, I go ahead and wrap up this card for now. For my next card though, I had already tried to kind of get rid of the rest of my actual like cutouts, but I wasn't sure what to do, so I piled them on together and I got this brilliant idea to make like a starburst sort of wreath thing that looked almost like it reminds me of a bouquet, like a fall bouquet. So yeah, the way that I did this was kind of make a 4-point like leaf thing, and then just work my way by building up more of that, and then at the very, very top add a piece of foiled leaf, and that really brought everything together. And I kind of wish I had something else to fill out the other end. Once I was done with that, I raised up this panel using some foam squares and I put it on top of my orange peel card base, and then after I was done with that, I did find an actual like thing to fill in any bit of that extra space that I had going on, but that did take a little bit of trimming. I didn't mind, I just kind of like, it was a bummer because I thought that I'd done all of my paper trimming. And before you ask, yes, this hurt my thumbs so much, but I was watching Coco, so it was totally chill. I barely noticed that my thumbs hurt so much until like after the movie was done. I trimmed off the excess of this card, and once I was done with it, I realized I hadn't put a sentiment on it, and I really wanted to put one. So I go ahead and I just use some clear embossing powder to add thank you to the bottom of this card and just leave it like that. After I was done with all of my actual cards though, I decided to go back and add some finishing touches, and here's where you see kind of like that magic take place for the outsides. I go ahead and I put sentiments on the inside of all of these cards because I am trying to, you know, decorate the insides of my cards a little bit more. I also go ahead and put some washi tape on the inside because I did just buy this Paper Source washi tape and it's super pretty and I wanted to do that. On the outside of my cards, I kind of went Nuvo drop crazy and I just started putting Nuvo drops everywhere, but I really liked how this Oyster Gray Nuvo drops actually just added a little bit of extra interest to my cards. So I wasn't too mad at it, but I know how some people really like simpler cards. So if you do want a simpler card, I don't recommend that you do this. But if you're someone who's like me and is kind of like, you know what, add another wig, be the best share that you possibly can, then you know what, bring out the Nuvo drops and do it up. Well guys, thank you so much for watching this video because this about just wraps everything up. I hope that you enjoyed everything. I hope that you guys got a couple of new ideas on how to use this kit, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.